What if one match could completely change the way the tennis world looks at a rising star? What if the player everyone expected to win walked onto the court with the experience, the titles, and the reputation, but walked off defeated by someone who simply refused to believe she was supposed to lose? That's exactly why the tennis world has been talking about Alexandra Eala. For years, fans have waited for the next breakthrough player capable of challenging the established order in women's tennis. Every season introduces another promising young talent. Some flash briefly before disappearing. Others take years to fulfill their potential. But every once in a while, someone arrives who makes people stop watching the rankings and start watching the tennis. Alexandra Eala is becoming that player. Her victory over Elena Rybakina at the Berlin Open wasn't just another upset on the WTA Tour. It represented something much bigger. Eala defeated one of the most accomplished players in women's tennis, winning in straight sets, 7-5, 6-4, to reach the quarterfinals. The result immediately became one of the biggest talking points of the tournament because Rybakina entered the match as one of the favorites, while Eala continued proving she belongs among the elite. But here's the fascinating part. This wasn't simply a story about one player having a bad day. It was about another player steadily building a game capable of competing with the very best. That's an important distinction. Throughout professional sports, people often dismiss surprising victories as accidents. They point to unforced errors. They mention difficult conditions. They search for reasons why the favorite lost instead of asking why the underdog won. However, those explanations don't always tell the whole story. Because if you watch Alexandra Eala carefully, you probably notice something that statistics alone cannot fully explain. Confidence, not reckless confidence. Earned confidence. She stepped onto the court looking like she believed she belonged there. Against a player with Grand Slam pedigree and one of the biggest serves in women's tennis, Eala didn't spend the afternoon surviving. She spent it competing. Point after point. Game after game. That mindset changes everything. Few people become elite athletes because they possess talent alone. The greatest competitors develop an ability to stay calm while everyone around them expects them to fail. That psychological strength often separates future champions from promising prospects. And that's one of the biggest reasons his victory captured worldwide attention, because it suggested that Alexandra Eala's rapid rise may not be slowing down anytime soon. Of course, one victory doesn't automatically make someone a Grand Slam champion. It doesn't erase years of experience held by established stars. It doesn't guarantee future success. Professional tennis is far too demanding for that. Every tournament presents different challenges. Every opponent forces different adjustments. Every surface rewards different skills. But momentum matters. Belief matters. Experience matters. And victories like this build all three. Interestingly, this wasn't Eala's first meeting with Elena Rybakina. Earlier in the season, the two had already faced each other in Rome, where Rybakina came away with a straight sets victory. That earlier defeat gave Eala first-hand experience against one of the tour's biggest hitters. Instead of allowing that loss to define the matchup, she appeared to learn from it and return with a more effective plan in Berlin. That raises an important question. What changed? Was it better preparation? Greater tactical maturity? Improved movement? Or was it simply the natural evolution of a young player gaining confidence every month? The answer may be a combination of all those factors, because player development rarely follows a straight line. Sometimes improvement happens quietly. One better serve, one smarter return, one stronger backhand, one extra layer of confidence. Then suddenly everyone notices. That's exactly what seems to be happening with Alexandra Eala. While headlines naturally focus on the upset itself, many tennis analysts also notice how composed she remained during the biggest moments of the match. Rather than forcing spectacular winners at every opportunity, she mixed intelligent shot selection with aggressive intent, repeatedly making Rybakina play one extra ball. Reuters reported that Eala used sharp angles in her court coverage effectively, creating problems that prevented Rybakina from fully controlling rallies. Those details matter, because sustainable success isn't built on miracle shots. It's built on repeatable habits, the ability to execute under pressure, the willingness to stay patient, the courage to attack when the opportunity finally appears. Those are championship qualities, not guarantees of championships, but qualities shared by many players who eventually reach that level. Naturally, excitement has followed this breakthrough. Some fans have already started asking bold questions. Has Alexandra Eala officially arrived? Can she consistently challenge top 10 players? Could she become a serious contender at the biggest tournaments? Those questions remain unanswered, and that's perfectly normal. The WTA Tour has a long history of emerging stars experiencing incredible weeks before encountering new obstacles. Consistency remains one of the hardest achievements in professional tennis. Winning once is difficult. Winning repeatedly against elite competition is even harder. That's the true challenge awaiting Eala. Still, there's another reason this story resonates far beyond one tournament. It represents possibility for Philippine tennis, for young athletes across Asia, for every player trying to break into a sport traditionally dominated by established powers. Every breakthrough reminds the next generation that progress is possible, that dreams become more realistic when someone proves they can be achieved. And perhaps that's why this victory feels larger than one scoreline, because moments like these inspire future competitors who haven't even picked up a racket yet. However, the biggest question still remains. Was this simply one unforgettable afternoon? Or was it the clearest evidence yet that Alexandra Eala has developed into a genuine threat against the very best players in women's tennis? The answer begins with everything that happened before the first ball was struck, and a fascinating tactical battle that unfolded throughout one of the biggest matches of her young career. Long before the first serve was struck in Berlin, Alexandra Eala understood exactly what she was facing. Elena Rybakina had built her reputation by making even the best players feel rushed. Her serve could shorten points in an instant. Her ground strokes carried tremendous pace, often forcing opponents several feet behind the baseline. When she dictated the rhythm of a match, very few players could stop her. For someone still establishing herself at the highest level, the challenge couldn't have been much bigger. Yet the opening moments of the match hinted that this would not follow the script many expected. Rather than standing too far behind the baseline and simply reacting, Eala positioned herself with purpose. She looked ready to absorb Rybakina's power when necessary, but she also searched for opportunities to redirect that pace instead of matching it shot for shot. That distinction was important. Trying to overpower one of the hardest hitters on tour can quickly become a losing strategy. Instead, Eala appeared focused on disrupting Rybakina's rhythm, changing the patterns of rallies, and refusing to let her settle into a comfortable tempo. It was a mature approach. Every point became a small tactical battle. When Rybakina landed a strong first serve, Eala worked to neutralize the return rather than attempt low-percentage winners. Once the rally developed, she relied on movement consistency and well-chosen angles to keep the exchanges alive. Those extra shots began to matter. Elite players are accustomed to finishing points quickly. When rallies last longer than expected, frustration can quietly build. That doesn't mean a player suddenly loses confidence, but can force adjustments they weren't planning to make. As the match progressed, Eala continued to stay composed. She didn't appear overwhelmed by the occasion. She didn't rush between points. She didn't let individual mistakes snowball into multiple lost games. That emotional stability became one of the defining themes of the afternoon. Professional tennis often comes down to handling momentum. A player might dominate for 3 games, only to lose focus for the next 2. The scoreboard can change quickly, especially when both competitors possess world-class ability. Eala seemed determined not to let those emotional swings dictate her performance. Whenever Rybakina produced a powerful sequence of winners, Eala reset almost immediately. She focused on the next point, then the next, then the next. That mindset may sound simple, but executing it under the pressure of a major WTA event is another matter entirely. Few young players manage it consistently. Another subtle element of Eala's performance was her court coverage. Instead of chasing every ball in desperation, she moved efficiently, arriving balanced and ready to hit. That allowed her to defend difficult positions while still looking for chances to transition into attack. The result was a style of tennis that blended patience with controlled aggression. She wasn't passive. She wasn't reckless. She picked her moments. And against a player of Rybakina's caliber, those decisions carry enormous weight. One poorly timed attacking shot can completely shift momentum. One unnecessary error can erase several minutes of excellent tennis. Eala largely avoided those traps. She trusted the game plan. That trust became increasingly important as the first set reached its decisive stages. Every game seemed to carry additional pressure. The crowd sensed the possibility of an upset. Rybakina, meanwhile, was searching for the burst of tennis that has carried her through so many difficult matches during her career. Champions often find another level when the situation becomes uncomfortable. It's one of the qualities that separates the elite from the rest of the field. But on this occasion, Eala continued matching that intensity. Instead of backing away from the biggest moments, she embraced them. That willingness to compete under pressure may prove to be one of the most valuable lessons from this victory. Talent attracts attention. Composure earns respect. When the first set eventually went Eala's way, the significance extended beyond the scoreboard. Winning a set against an established star is one challenge. Maintaining that level for an entire match is another. Many upsets fade because the underdog relaxes too early or begins thinking about the finish line instead of the next point. The second set would reveal whether Eala could maintain both her tactical discipline and emotional balance. Predictably, Rybakina attempted to respond. Players at her level rarely disappear after losing a close set. They look for adjustments, perhaps a more aggressive return position, perhaps greater first serve accuracy, perhaps shorter rallies. Whatever the exact tactical conversations happening internally, one thing was clear. The pressure on Eala was increasing. This is often where experience matters most. Holding a lead against one of the world's strongest competitors can feel more difficult than building it in the first place. Every service game carries added significance. Every break point feels magnified. Every decision becomes more complicated. Yet Eala continued relying on the same principles that had brought her success. She stayed patient. She defended intelligently. She attacked with conviction when opportunities appeared. Just as importantly, she avoided trying to produce spectacular tennis simply because the finish line was approaching. That discipline deserves recognition. Young athletes sometimes believe they must play perfectly to defeat elite opponents. In reality, perfection rarely exists. The objective is to make enough good decisions over the course of a match. Eala appeared to understand that. Rather than chasing highlight reel winners, she kept building points, trusting that consistent pressure would eventually create openings. It was a strategy grounded in maturity rather than emotion. As the match entered its closing stages, the atmosphere became increasingly tense. The possibility of a major upset was no longer hypothetical. It was real. Every point carried additional weight. Now comes the most important question. Does one remarkable victory automatically mean Alexandra Eala is a better player than Elena Rybakina? The short answer is no. And that's exactly why this story deserves a deeper analysis rather than an emotional reaction. Sports history is filled with unforgettable upsets. Young players defeat champions. Lower-ranked teams overcome heavy favorites. Underdogs rise to the occasion when almost nobody expects them to succeed. But sustaining that level over months and eventually years is what separates a memorable moment from a truly elite career. That's why it's important to look beyond the headline. Instead of asking whether Eala is already better than Rybakina, a more meaningful question is this. What did this victory reveal about Alexandra Eala's potential? That answer is far more interesting. One of the biggest takeaways was her tactical maturity. Against one of the most powerful hitters on the WTA Tour, Eala resisted the temptation to play at Rybakina's preferred pace. Rather than try to overpower her opponent, she consistently looked for ways to vary the rhythm of rallies, using placement, movement, and intelligent shot selection to create opportunities. That approach reflects a player who understands that tennis is not only about power, it's about solving problems. Every opponent presents a different puzzle. Some demand aggressive returning. Others force longer rallies. Others require patience above everything else. Elite competitors recognize those differences and adapt. Berlin suggested that Eala's ability to make those adjustments is improving rapidly. Another encouraging sign was her composure. Many young players produce brilliant tennis for a short period before nerves begin affecting their decision-making. That's completely understandable. Professional tennis places extraordinary psychological demands on athletes. One mistake can change an entire set. One lapse in concentration can alter a tournament. Against Rybakina, Eala largely avoided those emotional swings. She accepted mistakes without allowing them to define the next point. That resilience may become one of her greatest strengths as her career continues. Of course, every developing player also has areas that require further growth. That's true even for Grand Slam champions. Improvement never truly stops in professional sport. For Eala, consistency across different tournaments will likely remain one of the biggest tests. Defeating a top opponent once attracts attention. Producing that level week after week earns lasting recognition. The physical demands alone are enormous. Travel, changing surfaces, different playing conditions, new opponents with unique styles. Managing all those variables requires not only technical ability, but also endurance, recovery, and mental discipline. Those challenges await every young star attempting to establish herself among the world's best. And that's why patience remains essential. It's tempting for fans to declare every breakthrough as the beginning of a new era. Sometimes they're right. Sometimes the journey takes longer. Sometimes development happens in unexpected ways. No single match can answer every question. However, it can reveal valuable clues. This performance offered several. Perhaps the most significant was Eala's willingness to compete without fear. Fear influences tennis in subtle ways. Players become hesitant. They avoid aggressive targets. They stop trusting their instincts. Those tiny changes often decide close matches. Eala appeared determined not to let reputation dictate her decisions. She respected her opponent, but she didn't appear intimidated by her. That distinction matters, because every future meeting against elite players becomes slightly different once an athlete proves to herself that victory is possible. Confidence built through real experience tends to last longer than confidence built through hope alone. There's also a broader historical perspective worth considering. Women's tennis has entered an era defined by remarkable depth. On almost any given week, highly ranked players face dangerous opponents capable of producing exceptional performances. That competitiveness benefits the sport. It creates unpredictable tournaments. It introduces fresh storylines. It encourages emerging talents to believe they belong. Alexandra Eala appears to be becoming part of that conversation. Her development also reflects the increasing globalization of tennis. Strong players now emerge from more regions than ever before. Programs continue expanding. Junior pathways have improved. Young athletes have greater opportunities to compete internationally from an earlier age. Eala's rise represents that changing landscape. She isn't succeeding because expectations were lowered. She's succeeding because she's earning opportunities against elite competition and increasingly taking advantage of them. Still, expectations can become complicated. The moment a player records a major upset, public perception changes. Opponents prepare differently. Media attention increases. Every tournament brings additional pressure. Fans expect another breakthrough, then another, and another. Managing those expectations becomes part of professional life. Some athletes embrace that spotlight. Others need time to adjust. How Eala navigates those external pressures may prove just as important as any technical improvement she makes over the next few seasons. Another fascinating aspect involves her adaptability. Modern tennis demands versatility. Players compete on hard courts, clay and grass, each requiring different movement patterns and tactical approaches. Success increasingly depends on learning quickly, making adjustments, recognizing what works and what doesn't. The Berlin performance suggested Eala is becoming increasingly comfortable making those in-match adaptations. That flexibility could become one of her defining characteristics. It's also worth remembering that careers are rarely defined by one tournament alone. Great players build their reputations through accumulation. One excellent performance becomes several. Several become consistent seasons. Consistent seasons become lasting legacies. Every stage requires fresh growth, fresh learning, fresh resilience. Eala appears to be entering one of the most exciting phases of that journey. The question now isn't whether she belongs on the biggest stages. Berlin offered compelling evidence that she does. The next challenge is transforming isolated breakthroughs into sustained excellence against the deepest fields in women's tennis. And if she accomplishes that, conversations surrounding her career may become even more significant than they are today. Because the biggest story may not be the upset itself. It may be what comes next, the next tournaments, the next elite opponents, the next opportunities to prove that this wasn't simply an unforgettable afternoon, but part of something much larger. And that bigger picture is exactly where this remarkable story leads next. The crowd responded to each exchange with growing anticipation. For Eala, those final moments represented more than an opportunity to defeat a highly respected opponent. They represented a chance to prove, to herself as much as anyone else, that she could close out one of the biggest victories of her career. Closing matches against elite players is one of the hardest skills in tennis. Opponents with championship experience rarely surrender quietly. They test every aspect of a player's game: technical execution, mental resilience, decision-making, physical endurance, and perhaps most importantly, belief. Eala answered that challenge. When the final point arrived, it wasn't just the end of an impressive performance. It marked another significant step in her development as a professional competing on the sport's biggest stages. The victory sent her into the quarterfinals, but its impact stretched much further than a single tournament bracket. Around the tennis world, conversations immediately shifted from whether Alexandra Eala could compete with elite players to how high her ceiling might actually be. And that conversation opens a door to an even deeper discussion, one that goes beyond a single upset and examines what this performance could mean for her future, her evolving game, and her place in the next generation of women's tennis. Every breakthrough in professional sports creates two very different reactions. The first comes almost instantly. Fans celebrate. Social media erupts. Headlines spread across the world. Analysts begin debating whether they have just witnessed the arrival of a future superstar. The second reaction takes much longer. It comes from coaches, fellow players, and experienced observers who ask a different question. Can this level be sustained? That question now follows Alexandra Eala wherever she competes. Not because people doubt her ability, but because maintaining success at the highest level is one of the greatest challenges in professional tennis. The WTA Tour offers very little time to celebrate. One impressive victory is quickly followed by another difficult opponent. Every week presents a new test. Every tournament introduces different conditions. Every draw creates fresh tactical challenges. The world's best players don't stay near the top because they occasionally produce brilliant performances. They remain there because they consistently solve new problems. That is the next chapter waiting for Eala. And based on what she demonstrated against Elena Rybakina, there are encouraging reasons to believe she is moving in the right direction. Perhaps the most impressive quality wasn't a single forehand, backhand, or passing shot. It was her decision-making. Throughout the match, she appeared willing to trust the game plan, even when the pressure increased. Young players often feel the urge to change everything once they sense a major upset is within reach. They begin aiming for spectacular winners. They rush points. They abandon the patterns that created the opportunity in the first place. Eala largely avoided that mistake. Instead, she remained disciplined. She trusted her movement. She trusted her preparation. And perhaps most importantly, she trusted herself. That type of confidence cannot be manufactured overnight. It grows through years of training, competition, setbacks, and gradual improvement. Every difficult loss teaches a lesson. Every close match provides experience. Every breakthrough adds another layer of belief. Seen through that lens, the victory over Rybakina feels less like a miracle and more like another milestone in an ongoing journey. It also highlights something important about modern women's tennis. The gap between established stars and emerging talents is becoming increasingly narrow. On any given day, preparation, execution, and confidence can reshape expectations. That unpredictability is one of the reasons the sport continues to captivate fans around the world. No reputation guarantees victory. No ranking wins a match before the first serve. Performance is what matters. And in Berlin, Alexandra Eala delivered performance worthy of global attention. Still, balance is essential. The excitement surrounding this result should not lead to unfair comparisons or unrealistic expectations. The title of this video asks whether Alexandra Eala is better than Elena Rybakina. Based on one match, that conclusion would go too far. A single victory even an outstanding one, does not erase everything Rybakina has accomplished over the course of her career. Experience, consistency, and long-term success are earned over many seasons, not one afternoon. But there's another way to look at that question. If better means who played the better tennis on that particular day, then the answer is straightforward. Alexandra Eala earned that victory on the court. She executed her strategy effectively. She handled the pressure. She won the points that mattered most. And in professional sports, the scoreboard reflects performance on that day, not reputation. That distinction is important because it respects both athletes. It acknowledges Eala's remarkable achievement without diminishing Rybakina's established accomplishments. Sports thrive on moments exactly like this. They remind us that greatness is never guaranteed. They remind us that every generation eventually produces new challengers. And they remind us why fans continue watching, even when a favorite appears unbeatable. Because sometimes the next great story is already unfolding before anyone fully recognizes it. For Alexandra Eala, this victory may become one of those defining moments people look back on years from now. Not necessarily because it answered every question, but because it changed the questions people were asking. Instead of wondering whether she belonged on the biggest stages, many observers are now wondering just how far she can go. Can she continue defeating elite opponents? Can she make deep runs at the sport's biggest tournaments? Can she establish herself as a consistent contender among the world's best? Only time can answer those questions. The beauty of sports is that nothing is guaranteed. Every tournament creates new opportunities. Every match writes another chapter. Every season reveals something new about the athletes willing to chase excellence. That uncertainty is what makes following a young player's career so compelling. Each victory adds confidence. Each setback offers lessons. Each challenge shapes the competitor she is becoming. For fans of Alexandra Eala, the journey may be just as exciting as the destination. And for tennis as a whole, emerging talents like Eala represent something every sport needs. Fresh energy, new rivalries, and the promise that the next unforgettable chapter is always waiting just around the corner. Whether this victory becomes a launching point for an even greater career or simply one memorable milestone, one fact remains undeniable. Alexandra Eala proved that she can stand across the net from one of the game's most accomplished players, compete with confidence, execute under pressure, and walk away with a victory that captured the attention of the tennis world. That alone makes this a story worth following. Because the biggest headlines in sports are rarely about what has already happened. They're about what might happen next. And if Alexandra Eala continues building on performances like this one, the tennis world will be watching every step of the way. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive analysis, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest stories from the world of tennis. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Where do you think Alexandra Eala's career goes from here, and what impressed you most about her performance? Until next time, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.